The sound of expensive heels clicking against marble floors echoed through the mansion, followed by a sickening thud and a frail cry of pain. What millionaire Marcus Chen witnessed that Tuesday afternoon would shatter his world and reveal the true character of the woman he was about to marry. But his response, nobody saw it coming. If this story moves you, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Trillionaire in Love. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to light. Marcus had built his empire from nothing. Starting with a small tech startup in his college dorm room, he'd worked 18-hour days for 15 years to create one of the most successful software companies on the West Coast. At 35, he was worth over $50 million, but success had come at a price. His relationship with his elderly mother, Lin Chen, had suffered during those grueling early years when every moment was consumed by business calls, investor meetings, and product launches. Lin Chen was 72 years old, a gentlewoman who had sacrificed everything to raise Marcus as a single mother after his father abandoned them when Marcus was just 8 years old. She had worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, serving lunch at a diner, and doing alterations from home, just to keep food on their table and pay for Marcus's education. Her hands were gnarled from years of hard labor, her back permanently bent from decades of physical work, but her heart remained as pure as the day she first held her son. When Marcus's company went public 3 years ago, he had insisted his mother move into his Beverly Hills mansion. "Mom, you've done enough. Let me take care of you now," he had said, tears in his eyes as he helped her pack her few belongings from the tiny apartment where she'd lived for 30 years. Lin had been reluctant at first, worried about being a burden, but Marcus convinced her it was time for her to rest and enjoy the fruits of both their labor. That's when he met Victoria Sterling at a charity gala. Victoria was everything Marcus thought he wanted. Stunning, sophisticated, well connected in high society circles. She was 31, a former model turned boutique owner, with platinum blonde hair and the kind of confidence that commanded attention in any room. Their whirlwind romance lasted 18 months before Marcus proposed with a 5-carat diamond ring at the same charity gala where they'd first met. But Victoria had grown up privileged, the daughter of a real estate mogul who had handed her everything on a silver platter. She had never known struggle, never understood sacrifice, and she viewed Marcus's humble beginnings and his devotion to his elderly mother as embarrassing relics of a past that should be forgotten. She tolerated Lin's presence in their home because she had to, but she made her displeasure known in subtle ways that Marcus, blinded by love and buried in work, failed to notice. Victoria would make snide comments about Lin's simple clothes, her inability to operate the smart home technology, her preference for cooking traditional Chinese meals in the pristine modern kitchen. "Marcus, darling, when we're married, perhaps your mother would be more comfortable in one of those lovely senior communities," she would suggest with a smile that never reached her eyes. She'd have friends her own age, activities suited to her interests. Lin Chen saw through Victoria's facade from the beginning, but she kept her concerns to herself. She had watched her son work so hard for so long, and she wanted him to be happy. If Victoria made him smile the way she did, if she brought light to his eyes after all those dark years of struggle, then Lin would endure whatever coldness came her way. Love, she knew, sometimes required sacrifice. The morning of October 15th started like any other. Marcus kissed Victoria goodbye as she headed to her boutique, and he left for what was supposed to be a 2-day business trip to San Francisco to finalize a merger deal. Lin planned to spend the day as she always did, reading in the garden, preparing a simple meal, and staying out of Victoria's way. But at 11 a.m., Marcus received news that would change everything. The other company's CEO had suffered a heart attack, and the meetings were postponed indefinitely. Instead of calling ahead, Marcus decided to surprise Victoria by returning home early. Perhaps they could have lunch together, maybe take his mother to her favorite dim sum restaurant downtown. It had been too long since the 3 of them had spent quality time together. Marcus pulled into his circular driveway at 2:30 p.m., his heart light with anticipation. He noticed Victoria's white Mercedes in the garage and smiled, grateful she had decided to come home early from the boutique as well. As he entered through the side door, he heard raised voices coming from the living room. His smile faded as he recognized the sharp tone of Victoria's voice, but he couldn't make out the words. Moving quietly toward the sound, Marcus felt his blood run cold as he heard Victoria screaming at his mother, "You stupid old woman, look what you've done. This vase was worth more than everything you owned in that pathetic little apartment." Marcus rushed toward the living room and witnessed a scene that would haunt him forever. His frail mother was on her hands and knees, desperately trying to collect the pieces of a shattered crystal vase, while tears streamed down her weathered cheeks. Victoria towered over her, fury contorting her beautiful features into something ugly and cruel. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," Lynn whispered, her voice shaking with fear and shame. "I was just trying to dust it. I didn't mean. Sorry doesn't fix it, does it?" Victoria snarled. "God, I can't wait until Marcus finally puts you in a home where you belong. You're nothing but a burden, a reminder of the gutter he crawled out of." What happened next would replay in Marcus's mind for months to come. As his mother struggled to stand up, her arthritic knees shaking with the effort, Victoria actually kicked her, not hard enough to cause serious injury, but with enough force to send the elderly woman tumbling back to the floor with a cry of pain and shock. "Stay down there and clean up your mess," Victoria spat. "And next time, keep your clumsy hands off things you could never afford." The sound that escaped Marcus's throat was somewhere between a roar of rage and a cry of anguish. Victoria spun around, her face going white as she saw him standing in the doorway. For a moment, the three of them were frozen in a tableau of horror, Marcus trembling with fury, Victoria calculating how to explain away what he'd just witnessed, and Lynn looking up at her son with shame and fear. "Marcus," Victoria's voice immediately shifted to the sweet, melodious tone she used when she wanted something. "Darling, you're home early. I was just. Your mother had a little accident, and I was helping her. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet as he walked slowly into the room. "By kicking her while she was on the ground. You don't understand," she broke. "I understand perfectly." Marcus knelt beside his mother, his hands gentle as he helped her to her feet. The contrast between his tender care for Lynn and the cold fury in his eyes as he looked at Victoria was striking. "Mom, are you hurt? Do you need me to call a doctor?" Lynn shook her head, unable to speak through her tears. Marcus noticed the red mark on her shin where Victoria's designer heel had connected, and something inside him snapped. But instead of the explosion Victoria expected, Marcus became eerily calm. "Victoria, please pack your things and leave my house." "What, Marcus, you're overreacting. It was an accident. I barely touched her, and she's fine. You kicked my elderly mother while she was on her knees trying to clean up a mess." Marcus's voice never rose above conversational level, which somehow made his words more terrifying. "The woman who sacrificed everything so I could have the life that allows me to buy you designer clothes and expensive jewelry. You kicked her and called her a burden." Victoria's mask finally slipped completely. "She is a burden. She doesn't belong in our world, Marcus. She's holding you back, holding us back. When people see her, they see where you came from, not where you're going. I was doing what needed to be done. What needed to be done," Marcus repeated slowly. "You know what needs to be done. You need to leave now. Security will escort you out. You can't be serious. We're getting married in 3 months. The invitations have been sent. The venue is booked." Marcus walked to his home office and returned with a small black box. Victoria's engagement ring. He set it on the marble coffee table where the crystal vase had stood just minutes before. "The engagement is off. The wedding is cancelled. I'll handle the vendors and guests." Victoria stared at the ring, then at Marcus, finally understanding that he was completely serious. Her shock quickly turned to rage. "You're choosing her over me, that pathetic old woman over your own future?" Marcus looked at his mother, still trembling and trying to pick up the last pieces of crystal, despite her shaking hands. Then he looked back at Victoria with something that might have been pity. "I'm not choosing her over you, Victoria. I'm choosing love over cruelty. I'm choosing respect over status. I'm choosing the woman who gave me everything over the woman who would take everything away." Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, fury, calculation, and finally desperate panic. "Marcus, please think about what you're doing. We're perfect together. I made a mistake. I was stressed about the wedding planning. I can change." "No, you can't," Marcus said quietly. "This isn't about stress or mistakes. This is about who you are at your core. And I just learned that who you are is someone who kicks elderly women and calls them burdens." Marcus pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Within minutes, 2 security guards arrived to escort Victoria from the premises. As she gathered her belongings, she alternated between tears and threats, promising to ruin his reputation, to tell everyone he was a mama's boy who would never amount to anything without her connections. Marcus said nothing until the front door closed behind her for the last time. The mansion fell silent, except for the sound of his mother's quiet crying. Marcus knelt beside her again and gently took the crystal pieces from her hands. "Mom, look at me." Lynn raised a tear-stained face to meet her son's eyes. "You are not a burden. You never have been, and you never will be. You are the most important person in my life, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be part of our family." "But, Marcus, the wedding, all the money you spent. Money can be replaced, Mom. You can't be." He helped her to the sofa and sat beside her, wrapping his arm around her frail shoulders. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here to protect you. I should have seen who she really was." Lynn patted his hand with her weathered fingers. "You have such a good heart, my son. You see the best in people. That's not something to be sorry for. But it almost cost us both so much." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Finally, Lynn spoke again. "What will you do now?" Marcus looked around the mansion, the marble floors, the designer furniture, the crystal chandeliers, and realized none of it mattered without people who truly loved him to share it with. "I think," he said slowly, "we should start over. What would you say to moving somewhere smaller, more comfortable? Maybe a house with a garden where you can grow your vegetables again. Somewhere that feels like home instead of a museum." Lynn's eyes lit up for the first time that day. "You would do that, Mom. Home isn't a place. Home is wherever you are." The challenges that followed weren't easy. Victoria did try to damage Marcus's reputation, spreading rumors in their social circle about his bizarre choice to prioritize his mother over his fiancée. Some business associates questioned his judgment, wondering if someone who would throw away a woman like Victoria over such a minor incident might make similarly irrational business decisions. Marcus lost some fair-weather friends and a few business connections. The wedding cancellation cost him nearly $200,000 in deposits and fees. Victoria sold her story to a gossip blog, painting herself as the victim of a man with an unhealthy obsession with his mother. But Marcus discovered something valuable in the aftermath. The people who truly mattered, his longtime friends, his most trusted business partners, his employees who had worked with him for years, all supported his decision. They had never been comfortable with Victoria's treatment of Lynn, and they respected Marcus more for finally seeing what they had seen all along. Marcus did sell the mansion, and he and Lynn moved to a beautiful but modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Lynn got her vegetable garden and a kitchen where she could cook the comfort foods of Marcus's childhood. Marcus found that he worked better from his home office, with the sound of his mother humming in the kitchen and the smell of her cooking filling the air. 6 months later, at a community volunteer event where Lynn had convinced Marcus to help serve meals to families in need, he met Sarah Kim, a social worker who had been helping Lynn coordinate care packages for elderly immigrants. Sarah was kind, humble, and when she learned that Lynn was Marcus's mother, she spent an hour asking Lynn about her experiences coming to America and raising a son alone. Sarah treated Lynn with the respect and affection that Victoria had never shown, and she saw Marcus's devotion to his mother as a sign of character, not weakness. Their relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for each other's well-being. A year later, when Marcus proposed to Sarah in Lynn's vegetable garden, Lynn cried tears of joy. This time, she knew her son had chosen someone who understood that love multiplies when shared, rather than diminishes. The wedding was small, held in the backyard of Marcus and Lynn's home, with flowers from Lynn's garden and food she had helped prepare. Victoria's absence was notable only for how much happier everyone seemed without her presence. In his wedding speech, Marcus looked at his mother, tears in his eyes, and said, "Mom, you taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the love we give and receive. You showed me that true strength isn't in commanding a boardroom, but in sacrificing for those we care about. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like, so I could recognize it when it found me again." The story of Marcus Chen spread through social media, not because Victoria had tried to shame him, but because people were inspired by a successful man who had chosen character over status, love over appearances. He received thousands of messages from people who had faced similar choices, who had been encouraged by his example to prioritize what truly mattered. Marcus's business continued to thrive, perhaps because employees and partners respected a leader who lived by his values. He started a foundation supporting elderly immigrants and single mothers, inspired by his mother's journey and the struggles he had witnessed in their community. Lynn Chen lived to see her first grandchild, a daughter that Sarah and Marcus named Grace Lynn Chen, carrying forward the legacy of quiet strength and unconditional love that Lynn had embodied. She spent her final years surrounded by the love she had always given so freely, finally receiving the care and respect she had always deserved. On the day of Lynn's funeral, 5 years after the incident with Victoria, hundreds of people came to pay their respects. Former employees who remembered Lynn bringing home made soup when they were sick, neighbors whose children she had tutored in English, families from the community center where she volunteered every week. Victoria was notably absent, but Marcus realized he rarely thought of her anymore. She had become just a brief, unpleasant memory in a life filled with so much genuine love and purpose. Standing at the podium to deliver his mother's eulogy, Marcus looked out at the sea of faces, people from all walks of life who had been touched by his mother's kindness, and he understood the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't the numbers in his bank account, or the size of his house, or the designer clothes his former fiancée had worn. It was this, the legacy of love that his mother had built, one gentle act at a time. "My mother once told me that we are measured not by what we accumulate, but by what we give away," Marcus said, his voice strong despite his tears. "She gave away her comfort so I could have opportunities. She gave away her time so others could learn English. She gave away her energy so neighbors could have a warm meal. And in giving all of that away, she became the richest person I've ever known." Marcus paused, looking at Sarah holding baby Grace in the front row, and continued, "She also taught me that it's never too late to choose love over everything else. Some people spend their whole lives looking for treasure, never realizing they're already surrounded by it. My mother helped me see the treasure that was right in front of me all along." After the service, as friends and family shared stories and memories, Marcus reflected on how different his life might have been if he hadn't come home early that October afternoon. He might have married Victoria, might have slowly distanced himself from his mother to keep the peace, might have spent years in a loveless marriage built on appearances rather than genuine connection. Instead, he had learned the most valuable lesson of his life, that character is revealed not in moments of triumph, but in moments of choice. When faced with choosing between what looked good and what was good, between status and substance, between the approval of society and the love of family, he had chosen correctly. The broken crystal vase had never been replaced. In its place on the coffee table sat a simple ceramic bowl that Lynn had made in a pottery class during her final years, filled with fresh flowers from Sarah's garden. It wasn't worth much money, but it was priceless in every way that mattered.